GunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions.
Oh, welcome everybody to what happened here? Oh, there we go. Welcome everybody, and we're ready for another episode of Ask Gun Questions. Got Tony joining us. Thanks for jumping in.
Yep, no problem. Glad to be here.
And I don't know why I'm all scattered today, but I think we got everything here. Oh, you know what I was going to do? I was just shutting down my windows here, and when you jumped in, I was over there looking at X, just scrolling, and then I was shutting down Instagram as we were starting the show up, and I was going to ask you to start out the show this week, if you had to pick something from this last week from X and Instagram are basically the same. Most of us just post the same thing on both. But from those two socials, anything that stands out this week? Like, is there a post?
Oh, a post of the week kind of thing going?
Yeah, I realize.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking of like what happened that we would be concerned about is what we do. And it's nothing about a drone because that's bull crap. That's just a distraction. But the weak attempt by the Attorney General in New Jersey to sue Glock, talking about that Glock is responsible for putting machine guns out, so they're suing Glock to save America from homemade machine guns. What? So that's the thing, and then to watch the entire, just everybody come down on him like a ton of bricks, talking about how useless and stupid what he's doing is. That for me stood out, and I actually made a post about it. So that's what I think stood out. Nothing about anything else. Yeah, the Attorney General Matt Plankin. I don't even know if I tagged it. Nope, I just screenshotted that. I won't tag these scumbags anymore because I think they get paid off engagement.
Well, they definitely get support, right? That helps someone engage them. So that's something that you've been doing for a while now. Is instead of just sharing or reposting,
yeah.
Who's desperately looking for attention? You'll just screen capture it, so you get the data you're looking for, and then create a picture, and then talk about the picture, which doesn't. I mean, the eyeballs link to it, but there's nothing in the system that links to them. And that's a great idea. It takes a second longer, I suppose, but it's totally worth it, so that you're not supporting the groups that are out there. And like you've mentioned it before, they're literally rating those. I forget what you called it, but they're literally making these posts just so that people will share them. They'll say something weird or dumb just so that people will repost it, and it helps their projects for sure. More than money, really.
Like I'm like I have to go through and even see if I included the part that showed how many shares that this scumbag got for a bullcrap post. Because again, eyeballs, even if they're hostile. Nah, I didn't include it in the bottom of the page. But yeah, they just get mentioned, and it's just disgusting because they're disgusting. Because you know what they're doing is untrue. The reason they're posting it is attention. Like, how can you possibly, like, Glock doesn't make machine guns, and you can't download Glock, and just stop. When you actually know how things work, what you're doing is making no sense. But that was my thing, I think, this week. Again, yeah, you just asked me off the top of my head, and that's where I stopped at, because it ticked me off enough to write it up.
No, I'm glad I did, because I think I was thinking about the stupid drone, like you said, distraction. I've heard about it, and I was just looking at Instagram here, and as I was closing it out, I seen, I don't know, some kind of ball in the sky. Didn't look anything all that crazy like an alien to me. It just looked like some kind of ball of light in the sky from like a party or something that just got stuck there. But you know, so it's just a light bulb. It wasn't like a thing with complicated arms and legs and, you know, like something from Star Wars. So I just figured that must be bugging the hell out of you in New Jersey right now with all the attention towards such a dumb, like a trivial thing. But I'm glad you brought that up because I had seen something about it and it would have gone in and out, like just in an ear, one out the other, because there's so much of this stuff going around right now. And honestly, I'm paying more attention to Massachusetts, not like every day I wake up and worry about Massachusetts, but their stuff has been the most recent and the largest, most recent thing that's going on. And me personally, you know, because of Cape Gunworks and I follow I just happen to be following some people in Massachusetts anyway, you know, the is it
yeah,
is it Two A Sisters, a gun story? But you know, the there's a couple of people I follow in Massachusetts, so I just happen to be paying attention to it. But I know that you've had an issue with machine guns, and what was the other state? Illinois? Somebody else was suing Glock over them also.
Illinois did this. So, okay, I don't know. I know back in the day, New Orleans tried to sue him.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, and that was more just because Glock existed or whatever, and they were selling guns or something like that. But this whole machine gun thing, I guess I was going to say, I've just happened to have taken a Glock Armorers course a couple of times over the years, working at the gun shop and just being interested and whatnot. And I don't know, have you ever taken the Glock Armorers course? Before it was a big deal because
Nope.
you didn't learn anything like that except if you took the Armorers course. But this was back in the mid 2000s because of the internet. People hate Glock so much. They you know, like the manuals used to be like, don't put these manuals out because we just don't want people messing with the guns and messing them up if they're not getting the, you know, it's like anything, like a liability thing slash just technical operation. Like if someone's not going to walk you through the manual itself can be not dangerous, but it just can be not complete, I guess. Like, and the danger can be if you assume because you read the manual, you know everything, when there's a reason they give you an 8-hour course with the manual, or the manual is to remind you of what you learned in the 8-hour course. And they just make sure that you learn everything in the 8-hour course. And it might be something as simple as like, do this first before you do that. And in a drawing, you're not going to realize you're supposed to do this first, or maybe pull the pins through from one side to the other. You know, there's just little things that you might do that if you don't gather that from the manual, then you could be doing things wrong or just wear out parts. I don't think there's anything dangerous, but just, you know, just little things. So they say take the course. And because they said that, they didn't put the manual out there. You couldn't just buy the manual. Well, that bothered all the Glock haters, of course. And they put the manual out there. So now everybody got the manual, and then everybody got the curriculum of the armorers courses. Oh, and I'd say probably mid 2000s still, there was already multiple versions of a Glock armorers course. And then there was just like pistol armorers courses. SIG has an armorers course. Other companies have their own specific ones. But anyway, that being said, there is a lot going on in the slide of a Glock that really nobody pays attention to because most of the time there's nothing sexy to put up there. You know, you're not going to get a different firing pin. I don't think there's any different firing pins, or those firing pin channel sleeve. Like nobody upgrades that, and the spring, pretty much people leave that stuff alone. So pretty much nobody pays attention to the slide. And I guess the reason I'm explaining all this is that in an armorer's course, depending on which armorer's course you take, if you take the armorer's course that talks about full auto, they'll tell you what there is full auto Glocks. They did make them. The Glock 17 was the first one. The Glock 18 was the full auto one, and that was the second one. But a full auto Glock has stuff in the slide, and it has a switch on the slide, just like a lot of guns have their selector switches like built in. So everybody's talking about is the switch on a Glock, which is a thing that replaces the back plate. And it creates full auto in a Glock in a different way than the actual way that a Glock does it. And that's why I think it's splitting hairs, but it's also showing their dumbassness or their ignorance, I guess, because they're going to suggest that it's Glock's fault that somebody put a third-party thing on there to do something. If they wanted to get mad at Glock for building a full auto, then they have to go get mad at the 18, right? Shouldn't they be getting mad at the actual? And that's not what's on the streets. And I mean, that's, I guess, the same as, I guess the reason I'm saying this is because it's the same as like any gun. You could go to any semi-auto and figure out a way to create, to mess with the sear essentially and get it to not pay attention to the trigger until the trigger comes back into play. And sometimes it's as easy as knotting up a string, and sometimes you put a rubber band in a certain place, or sometimes you knock a tab off of something. But there's lots of ways to do it. Sometimes you can just put a shim in a place, and it's just to make changing the trigonometry or something, changing the angles of some of the stuff inside there, and that's really all the Glock switch is doing, is going in there and kind of sticking a popsicle stick in a place where, when that popsicle stick is there, it fires forever until the magazine is empty, and then if you flip the popsicle stick out of the way, then it shoots like a normal Glock again. So I think we're allowed to talk about this stuff. I don't know how YouTube is. Every single day I log on, I get more and more videos removed due to their I don't know, trickle of hating gun channels. Well, they removed my videos from like 2015, 2016, like Big Sandy going to a machine gun shoot and filming it. Evidently, that's against all the rules now. So I don't know what we're allowed to talk about. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it because we're kind of talking about the internals of a gun. I know they get all worried about that, but I don't know. I know that's splitting hairs or whatever, but it does bother me when they talk about these switches, which are external, like third-party parts that do this conversion. I guess the fanciest of them have a button, but they don't always have a button. Sometimes they just jam a popsicle stick, we'll say, in there, and it's just always full auto, which are lame. Like that's got to be the dumbest of guns ever, is one that's only full auto. You just can never even shoot it normal. But the other thing is, what bothers me, and it's bothered me since it happened, is back in the buyback days. Was this like 3 years ago? This was Biden's presidency, I think. It might have been last Trump or Trump one. But there's buybacks in New York and maybe other states, but New York is the one I remember because I was watching all the 3D printers at the time. They were kind of becoming a thing. It might have been only like the second year of the, what do they call it? The gunmakers.
The gunmakers match?
Yeah, I think it was in that era between year 1 and 2, maybe after year 2. They had already established, and I was watching them. I don't really care about printing guns, but I like the idea that people are doing it. Like, I personally don't give a shit about doing it. I'd rather have regular guns, but I'm glad that there's people doing it, and that they are also interested in the freedom aspect of it. So anyway, I'm trying to watch them and see what's going on. And in there somewhere, they're like championing and strategizing about how to take advantage of these gun buybacks. And they're super happy that people are making, I think some guy made, is it 50,000, 30,000, like tens of thousands of dollars at one of the buybacks, because one, the buyback money was coming from the government, which means it's tax money, and it was unlimited, I guess. And two, they were accepting parts as full guns, like idiots. Whoever the buyback people were idiots, and they allowed them to be taken advantage of. And I thought to myself, there's nothing good about this. Like, one, it's tax money, so you shouldn't be figuring out a way to bring tax money. Like, shut the thing down. Yes, that's awesome. Like, make them look like dummies. Yes, awesome. Like, do something so that they never want to do one again. Like, just show them how stupid of an idea it is or something. Awesome. But harvesting tax money out of it, that's only teaching. That's not even teaching anybody anything. That's just taking advantage of government bureaucracy. I just don't like it. But the other part of it was, why are they buying these? Like, what do they want? And I remember the one, this was like the third one, maybe. The first one was a big deal, and it just happened. And the person who did it maybe came out of the shadows and said I was the person that did it afterwards. But they were essentially scared to come out of the closet. They didn't say who they were. They just did it anonymously and made like $30,000, $50,000, whatever it was. Then the second one happened, and somebody brought in like tens of thousands. And I can't remember if that one was a different state, maybe. But they didn't know that person. And then the third person, who they did know, I think, had brought in like a gallon baggie of Glock switches, and they accepted those as machine guns. And that was the deal. They were given X amount of dollars for a shotgun, X amount of dollars for a pistol, but even more money for a machine gun. And they were taking Glock switches as machine guns. So this person was just printing Glock switches, and I think he printed a gallon baggie. So how many would that be? Hundreds. And he brought it in, and they were concerned, like, are we going to get arrested for having these? And they're like, well, it's a buyback, and they're taking them no questions asked, so we're just harvesting the money. and I don't want to say it was the gun makers match people. I don't know who I was watching. This was years ago. I was just watching some 3D printer people in a live chat, and they were having this discussion about, like, should we do it? Is it legal? And then, like, yeah, this person did it. It was awesome. And like I say, I was just apprehensive. And now I'm super pissed because they took that gallon baggie of Glock switches and run around all over the place saying, this is what we got off the streets. This is what we got off the streets. Like, one guy in his like mom's basement in his 3D printer, and you just funded him to go buy a whole bunch of new 3D printers, and that's it. Like, you didn't stop nothing. You didn't stop any gangs from doing anything. Somebody out here said that what also is crap is that those switches are coming from China. Now, those aren't 3D printed. Those are probably made out of metal or something. And I don't know who said that, but I thought somebody said that earlier. I'll find it in the chat here.
They were definitely coming out of China, because I remember the articles.
Right, but I think that's a whole different thing. That's more like the Chinese trying to put stuff onto our streets of our country to mess with us, right? Like, I think that's a whole different thing. I can't find that thing. Maybe
give us the switches to help protect the fentanyl that they're smuggling into this country.
Yeah, and just to disrupt, right? Like, just to create that general chaos, and then it needs the whole because whenever there's gang issues or whatever, like, everyone just disregards that. It's like, well, that's what you get for living in the city. Like, oh, that's what you get for living being poor or whatever. Like, they just throw it off and that's what you get. And that's, well, I think that's crap, for one, since I think we all kind of know that it's been since the 90s, maybe the 2000s, but definitely like the 2000s, but maybe even the 90s. The crime's been fairly organized. Like, I think it started in the prisons. You probably know more about this than I don't know about the history of it, but I got the impression that it kind of started to get organized as they, different counties or cities or wherever would, we're going to clean up the streets, and they arrest everybody and throw them in prison, and like, we're done. We figured it out. Like, those people still exist. They still have the positions and power, and they just were able to continue running everything from inside of prisons. And that, I don't know, I've heard a couple of different conversations from law enforcement that sound like that really hardened it. But then you keep fast forward into nowadays, a couple of decades later, and the gangs and stuff were really strong for a while there. But then the cartels came in, and just the gangs, took the gangs, I guess you could say. Like, all the gangs, fell into line with whatever cartel was the boss of them. And now they're just like taking orders from outside the country, essentially, a lot of the time. So when you're talking about, this stuff, I don't know. I think there's a lot more going on. And I think that there's international players at this point messing with us as well.
Well, there's a long history. It didn't help. There always been gangs. You put people in jail. There were still gangs operating. But when the war on drugs kicked off, and then it ramped up in the 90s, and you were doing 3-strike rules and all of that, and then the war on drugs, in the 90s with the crack and the increase, what you did was create a funnel into prisons where the gangs got educated and more organized. Then when you found out the CIA was intentionally funding, bringing drugs up to help fund their stuff that Congress wouldn't finance. Like, all of that's been in movies and books now, but it was called conspiracy theories in the 90s and the 2000s. All of that stuff was done internally by our own country and externally by third parties, because you break down a country from the inside, especially one as strong as America. Cause divisiveness, drug problems, a whole bunch of issues that take their eye off the ball internationally, and causes distractions and divisiveness, and also you affect entire generations of people that could be useful in the military or useful in the workforce or whatever, help create problems. And we thought crack was a big deal. They tried to say cocaine was a big deal. Then it was let's go back. They tried to say marijuana was like a giant threat. Then it was cocaine. Then it was crack. Well, now we're at fentanyl. It's only become worse. The war on drugs has been won by drugs. and it sucks. But it's third party stuff and the Glock switches and all that. It's just another way of, like, in New Jersey, it's planking, just blowing smoke. Me and 16 other attorneys generals, yeah, from states that have actual gang problems and a crap load of other issues, but you're trying to distract us with this stuff. And how is Glock responsible for what a third party does? They're not. That's like being upset at any car manufacturer because people put nitrous in the cars
Or
and get
loud
into
mufflers.
accidents. Yeah, anything. So it's ridiculous. And it's, I feel it's him padding his resume for future runs or political activity. Hey, look, I took on the biggest name in the country, because the way Glock switches work is the way any switch would work on a striker firearm. I mean, Glocks are no difference. It's just the one that people use the most and know about and have access to the back plate in that way.
Well, and you could probably do it on other guns, but there's like a model
Hmm.
of another gun. You'd have to do it special, and then another model of another gun, where the Glocks are kind of all clones of each other, at least as far as that part of the slide. So
Uh-huh.
you can make it really effective. You make that one part, and it works on dozens of Glock models, where that same part might work on 2 SIGs, and then you'd have to make a new one for the 5th SIG, and then another one for the 7th SIG. Just like any parts, So unless these companies start coming out with like a Smith and Wesson, you could probably put one on multiple.
With the end of the patent on Gen 3 Glocks, they're the most popular handgun in America, period. That design, because you have so many manufacturers that use it. So, yeah, like you said, for SIG P320, you'd have to make a switch. You'd have to make another switch for the P365. You'd have to make another switch for the CZP10. But if you make one switch that works with Glocks, you work with Glock. What is it? It works with Glocks. It works with daggers, PSA daggers.
I didn't think of that. It works on the clone.
Yeah. Yeah, it works on all the clones too. So I'm talking from Rock Island Armory to anything you could name, to any of the builds that you do with Polymer 80 or Lone Wolf. It all works. So yeah, somehow it's Glock's fault. Get out of here.
Now,
You're
have
clowns.
you seen the beginning of Sicario 2? The movie Sicario 2? However you say that.
Mm-mm. No, I haven't.
So these are
Oh, wait a
movies
minute.
about,
Is that when he bumps stop? He bumps the gun and like machine guns the lawyer or accountant down in the street.
yeah. So they figured this out back in Vietnam with 1911s. I mean, they probably figured it out before that, but I know people that used it with 1911s in Vietnam. But you can take any pistol and stick your finger in the trigger guard and just, well, I mean, don't do this at a range, but if you're out doing it someplace where you can do it, and you're not going to be able to do it safely, so just watch a movie about it. Don't do this. But if someone was to jam their one finger into the trigger guard, like if you're pointing at something, just stick your finger out straight and stick it in the finger guard. Take your other hand and push forward. What's going to happen is one round's going to go off, and since you've never done it before, it's going to just keep going off in your hands, I guess. I know people that can do it and empty a mag in a moment out of pretty much anything. They just have to. It's like riding a bike or a skateboard or something. Once you kind of get used to the balance of it, there's nothing to it. I don't like doing it because it's like a fire breathing dragon in your hands, or it's like holding a snake that's burping bullets or something. But it is a thing, and for times when it's necessary, it's just like any cover fire, any kind of that kind of last call type of thing. Or in that case, in the movie, he's trying to, he's shooting down at a guy on the ground, like he's making it a mess, like a cartel hit or something, or like a mob hit. So, but anyway, that I was just getting at that, like any semi-auto, you get back to bump stock or bump firing, and they can't do nothing about that. Like you can bump fire anything that can shoot the next round. It's actually way easier on pistols, just that no one ever does it because we all shoot pistols one-handed. I guess you can't do it to you can't do it to a revolver, but a revolver is in a semi-auto. But anyway, that's one of those things where it's like You don't want to show them. You don't want to be like, "What are you worried about a switch? Look at this." You don't need a switch, but at the same time, that's sort of the point. Like, you don't really need a switch. Plus, you can just how fast can like Jerry Mick pull a trigger, or anybody that's has time to sit around pulling triggers all the time. You can pull them pretty quick. Honestly, that all being said, I think about 90% of full auto pistols are shot up in the air as celebration or intimidation or mastery, right? Like, most people aren't shooting with them. They tend to rise. So you can shoot them. I've seen people shoot them effectively, but it takes, I don't know, a couple hundred rounds to like really figure it out. And then probably shooting them a lot before you can anticipate what it's going to do. I mean, I haven't seen too many people the people that own them and go to like exposition shoots or like maybe manufacturers that shoot them all the time are probably the people that get the most. But almost everybody I know that shoots one again for the first time, or not for the first time, but shoots one again, it's going to rise on them. It takes you like 2 or 3 mags before you get on it every single time, unless you're a person who owns one. Like, they're just a really difficult thing to shoot full auto out of a semi-auto. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, who uses them? We can definitely look into why or the ones that exist. Why did they exist, and who requested them? You know what I mean? Usually, it's close, like in security. They get them. Bodyguard kind of executive protection, not executive, but usually VIP protection, government and police departments kind of thing are the ones that actually request these things to be made, like the Beretta 93R. All those things were actually developed for military police kind of thing. And then who uses them and how much training? A lot. You need a lot of training to actually get that under control. I fired them. Even with the stock, it's like, all right, it takes a while to figure out that burst and how is it going to rise and how do you maintain it. But other than that, look, criminals are going to criminal. Criminals are going to criminal, and usually it's used for intimidation. Because it's a lot easier just to do aim shooting. You use less rounds and you hit who you mean. But if you want to terrorize the neighborhood, that's one way to do it.
Yeah,
they came through with machine guns and shot everything. Yeah, you scared the crap out of a whole bunch of people. And they tell everybody. If all you heard was 2 shots and then a bad guy dropped and things getting shot up and everybody didn't have this big announcement, it wouldn't get around as much as they did a drive-by and all this noise was made and people were sent scrambling. It's all psychological too.
Well, and you think about it when you're saying it like that, and that's what it is, right? Like, that's the use of them, is to run around just being reckless. It's actually pays off to them, the criminal, as well, because they rarely ever hit anybody doing that, and it does exactly what they want. They terrorize. It shoots a flower pot in the back of a car and somebody's tire. A bicycle over here. Every once in a while, somebody gets hit, and then they get charges against them. But the rest of the time, they're accomplishing just what they want. They're terrorizing the neighborhood, the other gang, whatever, the police itself, also, and nobody can do nothing about it because since they didn't hit anything, comparatively, they let it they blow it off, even though it's heinous. Like, they'll blow that kind of stuff off. So you're right. Like, they probably kind of rely on the machine gun, or it's just the burst jumping all over the place and being sporadic.
Well, it also helps with the anti-gun political movement, because if all you had was semi-automatic gunfire that was accurate and gangbangers and targets of gangbangers were being killed, there'd be less people upset.
There'd be way less gangbangers because there'd be like 6 left, right? Like boom, 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 and then 6 of them are down instead of like 12 of them getting mad at each other and walking away.
And shooting up a whole bunch of places and destroying equipment, and then it's news stories, and if it's salacious enough, it becomes scripts to TV shows. It becomes scripts to TV shows. If it's salacious enough, it becomes movie scripts, and you just have this image of everywhere you go in America, there's somebody doing a drive-by with a machine gun. So now you can stoke fear. Everybody knows that's the only purpose of full auto fire is to kill people. What? More people dump freaking full auto fire in the trash than actually use it to shoot at other people legally. Legal gun owners, that is.
I can't
It's
even
a
imagine.
fun thing to own and show your friends.
If you're talking actual full auto and you're not talking crew fire, tripod mounted stuff that's full auto with a belt to suppress or to shoot at a vehicle or something, so you need a bunch of ammo. If you're talking in a rifle that uses a magazine or anything smaller, I'll bet you're right, like 100%. In other words, what you're saying is there's recreational opportunities to shoot full auto, like in Vegas or other big cities where they have gun shops that have rentals of full autos. And then you talk machine gun shoots like Big Sandy, and we used to have others, and more will come. But compared to the time you spend in the military shooting full auto, which is almost zero, like probably 2% of the time, like maybe there's some unit that uses full auto, but not the top units. They don't ever flip to full auto as far as I know. And again, maybe somebody who's covering a back of something, they're going to say flip to full auto and shoot a couple of bursts because that'll keep people's heads down. Like, but that's really like the only time you get instructed to shoot full auto. So I'll bet you're right that I bet you it actually is overwhelmingly more recreational full auto use than any kind of military or police. And there's no police that use full auto. I can't think of any police that are being taught it. I mean, back in the day, maybe, but not in 2024.
Yeah. So police with full auto firearms at this point have military surplus full auto firearms, and they're not using them going house to house or whatever the heck, cops do. They're not serving warrants on full blast. It's not happening.
Never.
They don't want the liability. So when it really comes down to it, the only purpose full auto serves is excuse me, not the only purpose, but a major purpose of full auto in America today is entertainment for civilian firearms owners, and also as a fear tactic for the gun community, anti-gun movement. I really wish I could find this book. It was a guy who actually did the research, because in America's history, faded history, fake history, sentiment history, which we sometimes conflate with real history, it seems as if during Prohibition there were a lot of Tommy guns used and full auto used, and this person actually tracked it down, went through the data available, went through all the newspapers, and found out that for the entirety of Prohibition era, there were less than 12 uses of full auto machine guns and full auto fire throughout the nation. 12 in over a decade. Major crime shootouts. St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which is one of the things that was used to get the NFA passed. All of that. And it was just 12 incidences over a 10-year period that full auto was used. But because it was salacious, because it was scary, they put it in, because also, listen, a lot of those things they were stolen from National Guard armories for the most part, or they were made by homebrewed a-holes. Like, there was one guy who was a gunsmith down in Texas that made full auto 1911s and welded magazines from have 20 round mags. There was one dude, and I think they finally busted him, but he was one of the guys that was getting paid and making guns for gangbangers. But it was never that overall thing that we see in all movies whenever they talk about the 20s and the 30s, and that same black and white clips of guys shooting Tommy guns from the hip and shooting out the freaking old school cars. The same clip of
car driving by with like 4 Tommy barrels sticking out and drive by the old gangster drive.
Yeah, all of that is old movie crap. That's not factual, and anytime they talk about it, they show it, and it was like, no, that happened 12 times. 12 times. Like, the real story used to be taken away is that was all created because the government tried to legislate morality and get rid of alcohol, and they created the gang problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really good thing from Ken Burns. If you like watching documentaries, and the one segment of that Prohibition documentary gets really into that organized crime had no reason to exist, and then prohibition happened for however many years that was, and it created organized crime. They finally ended prohibition. Like you say, they decided at a federal level we didn't need to legislate some people's version of morality, and remove that whatever amendment was it 26? I don't remember. One of the higher amendments or whatever got rid of it. But organized crime didn't. They were like, hey, we figured out a way to be way more powerful than we ever were before. They're not gonna, just because they arrested a couple of us, that created a whole. There was nothing. I guess they say there was the mafia in Italy or whatever, the Yakuza in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
You think of like all these
Mm-hmm.
crime things that have gone back through time, and those were either from the days of the kings and queens, or they happened right after the kings and queens. They've been around for like ever, whenever countries stopped being kings and queens, so a long time ago. And the United States didn't have any kind of organized crime at all. We were just a country who was a bunch of people, criminals, of course, but there was nothing organized until prohibition created organized crime. So that's a great point.
You had immigrant communities that had crime that might have come from their country and their country's history. So you had Tongs in Chinatown once that was created. You had neighborhoods that had criminals in it that were from where they came from, but it was small time comparatively.
Right.
And then,
and all that.
yeah. And then all of a sudden you had this whole pretty much government, the entire government of the United States went, yeah, we're not going to have this thing, but we're going to have thousands of miles of border that you can bring it all in. And also, our police aren't ready to handle crime on a serious level because pretty much all the state police could do is chase you to the border of the state, and all the local police could do is chase you to the border of their township. So if you made it to the next county, you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing I like to bring up on kind of related to what you're talking about there, when you're talking about the exaggeration, I'll say, of the crimes at the time, is when you think about the dime. I always think of the dime novels from back in the days of the cowboys and stuff. And this probably happened with Robin Hood and crap like that too, from even further back in time. So there's always been someone who takes a kernel of an idea and it elaborates on it or exaggerates it into a story, for excitement or just whatever reason, right? To sell books. So they had this concept of the dime novels, these before comic books, I guess. That was what kids would read, easy to read, inexpensive, because of the printing press. So it was a phenomenon of the United States. So we had the ability to make inexpensive printing. People could read, right? So mix that together. They have a demand for something interesting. So they came out west and went, oh, there's like things happening out here. Let's exaggerate this stuff. And then you get all this cowboy, all the Indian wars. You get all the expansion. You get all these different searching for gold. I mean, the buffalo stuff. Trying to think of all the cavalry. Like there's all these different stories. And that was just a part of the country. And then you get to the gangsters, they put all that stuff away. Like, oh, let's put our typewriters away. No, then they had this new like breed of criminals to go after. And that's where you get to the exaggeration you're talking about. And, people have always assumed what they see on the movies and stuff is a portrayal of real life. So let's legislate according to what we saw in the movie last weekend. They do that all the time. It's frustrating. Imagine somewhere in there the CIA decided, hey, that's a phenomenon. Let's start paying for movies that have our agendas that we are down with. But it would be a whole
They definitely done that, and we know they do that. We're so stupid in this country, and let's go ahead and put it out like that. So I don't know if it's stupid, gullible, or we've been hoodwinked, or maybe it's all three. That we've conflated again fiction with history. So it must be true because my entire life I've been seeing this in westerns. My entire life, I've been seeing this when you talked about the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, because we've been seeing the same message and getting the same message over and over and over and over again until we get actually well written scripts or scripts that cut through the bullcrap and actual factual. And then you find out a lot of it was BS, but it's already in the American, I guess that's not lexicon, but culture. That this is true because we've always seen it. We're four generations and seeing it in moving pictures, listening to it in radio podcasts. I mean, radio shows before they were podcasts. I mean, think about how long we've been broadcast bull crap about cowboys versus Indians in the Wild West, and hardly any of it was true. Um, it's just decades of it, of how the Wild West was. Meanwhile, wasn't like any of that. And the few shows that were like that, they usually died out rather quickly. Those shows that really showed that it wasn't that glamorous. Oh, can I say something real quick about this New Jersey thing
Yeah, feel free.
with the drones? Because I'm seeing it all over. You're being distracted by bullcrap. They need you to concentrate on this because other things are going on that we don't know about. And I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's multiple things that are being accomplished by this. But what they're not saying a lot of, but I'm hearing is they're doing a search in grid patterns. These things are flying in grid patterns. It's of the belief of a few people that they may be looking for something that might give off fumes that can be picked up. You know what I mean? By slow, low flying aircraft. And we have the ability to use it because we do have drones. But it's not something the government doesn't know about because they were flying over Fort Dix and they were flying over New Egypt, which is where Fort Dix and Lakehurst Naval Base and dang, what's the and McGuire Air Force Base. All that's combined in the Joint Base McGuire or Joint Base. What's the heck is the name of it? Yeah, I think it's Joint Base McGuire. So where I don't know, did you ever get up here when you were in, or did you stay where you were? You
What do you
never went
mean?
to Fort Dix? You never came to Fort Dix when you were in the military? Okay. Fort Dix is huge. Fort Dix is attached to McGuire. Lakehurst is further down the road, but even though they are not next to each other, Lakehurst and McGuire and Dix, they all combine to become a joint base. Well, these some of these drones were spotted over Dix doing gun runs on the range. They were showing the drones. They were showing tracer fire. Understand, nothing gets in the air over a military base without the military allowing it.
Yeah, not for 4 minutes
It
or
has,
what. Like, yeah, no.
yeah, and also, I mean, because I'm looking at people online, and you realize one, some of it aren't people; they're third parties, or even the American government itself, and then some are just jerk offs. But people don't know how things work. This is New friggin' Jersey. We had a significant number of people died in 9/11 attacks. We have a crap ton of airports up here with a lot of airspace that's controlled. Nobody's flying crap in this area without us knowing about it and without our permission, because it will get shot down. This is not the place where you think you can just fly stuff, because we have people here that are my age or younger that were adults and lost friends and family in 9/11 attacks. So it's real. We don't allow people just to fly around in airspace here, whether it's drones or not. And these drones aren't small. I had coworkers just showing me stuff outside their house, and they're like, "Dude, this thing's the size of a Mini Cooper that was flying down the street." Because I'm reading just a lot of dumb things, and I don't read X a lot because once I do, you get caught up in the stupidity, and then I bail. Like around the third time I'm clicking in the comment and going down that little tree of stupidity, I bail out and back out. So yeah, this is a distraction. Don't I mean if you want to have fun guessing and everything, fine. But believe me, our government knows exactly what it is. I don't have a tinfoil hat on. I just have knowledge of where I live and what's acceptable. And we don't let things fly in the air for long here. Not since September 2001.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I haven't been paying attention, but if it's people speculating that it's anything other than just testing of something they don't want to talk about,
Hmm.
makes sense because it's obvious, like you just said, like everything you just said. I mean, I could see in the middle of nowhere, hey, somebody's flying around, and nobody knows about it. But you don't fly anywhere near an airport for more than 5 minutes without, well, maybe more than 5 minutes, but more than 5 times
Hmm.
without them sending a helicopter or a bunch of like they can, yeah, they're and then
Yeah.
I only remember hearing about somebody saying, and then the government said, yeah, there's nothing to worry about. We don't know what it is, and they're upset with that. And I'm like, what do you expect them to say? If they
Yeah.
said don't worry about it, they're not worried about it. They know what it is, right? Like it's done. Uh,
Exactly.
but I guess if you like to be upset about stuff. But now that I'm looking, because I haven't looked, I just heard that it's been a thing. Other than hearing about it, I haven't looked at it. Nothing about it looks other different than just a big giant drone. Like it has 4 lights and
Uh-huh.
everything. Just looks like a giant drone or whatever. And like why wouldn't they have drones with machine guns on them at some point? And they probably have suppressors so you don't hear them. But even if they're just up there targeting with like a laser or something, if they're practicing at the range, yeah, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I guess they might not want to do it in New Jersey. Seems kind of dumb, get everybody upset. They could have done it, in anywhere else where nobody's going to care. But
Well, I'm assuming that
I don't
has
know.
a purpose too. Okay.
Maybe
Again, if it's military testing stuff, or hold on,
that's a good
if
point.
it's military testing stuff, if it's dirty bomb stuff, and they're searching for one of those because it came in at the port. I mean, there's a lot of things only my imagination can keep up with. But understand where we are in New Jersey. This is the home where the invasion of the worlds took place, right? That radio show from the 30s that panicked the country, and they thought aliens were really landing.
Oh yeah, War of the Worlds.
That,
That was New Jersey.
yeah, War of
Yeah.
the Worlds actually happened in Jersey. And here we are in the same area in South Jersey with the same bull crap 100 years later. And people hysterical all over social media. Get out of here. Stop falling for the same crap.
That kind of makes it think as you say it like that, falling for the same thing. You think we're going to evolve social media beyond trivial and being manipulated? Like, will it get to be a savvy and sophisticated? I don't know if that's the perfect words, but a more adult. That's not the best word either. But like will we get better at
Oh,
the internet to where we're not so easily led or just misguided?
no. It's going to be exactly what television is, exactly what radio is, exactly. We're where we are as human beings, and we can be manipulated, and also entertained. And sometimes the line between the two, between manipulation and entertainment, it's really thin. Because some people just enjoy the bull crap and enjoy the conversation and the back and forth. Some people are going to believe everything they see, and there's always going to be someone trying to control the message because communication is manipulation.
Maybe we'll have a platform or something that'll take off as like a good one for communication that isn't or for once people get sick of the hype. I don't know how long that takes though, but we'll see.
It'll change up. It always does.
It seems like the people that are into the hype, I guess I don't pay attention to them, so I don't know. But I do know
Hmm.
that people get worn out from it, I guess, and they kind of, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of people that have come and gone over the years, and I can't think of too many people that did the hype for too long. They get sick of it, or it burns out, or the thing that they want to hype about, you know, is not the trend anymore, and that's their one trick pony. And I don't follow too many people that only hype, that only worry about the hype, whatever the current hype of the week is. But as far as people getting worried about the hype, I've known people that get, in my opinion, too worried about everything that comes along, and they get worn out. And I guess that's the question I was getting at is, will we get to the point where we figure out that if we chase this stuff around, it's endless? Just don't chase that stuff around. You have a lot more staying power. You can stay online a lot longer. You can have conversations. A lot of it is just people yelling at each other about dumb things. Like, let's say this drone thing. Like, I think it's aliens. I think it's the government. I hate you now. Let's not be friends anymore. And it's like, what? We just had two people that were, good part of the community, and now both of them left over something that really wasn't all that big a deal in the big picture. But
yep,
I'm going off in tangents. We got a bunch of people saying hey, but not too many questions being asked. I'm going to go look at the database here for the first time. We have a spreadsheet, I guess I call it a database, a spreadsheet that gets filled up when people ask questions over at the website. I'm not good at this. If I was actually good at this show, I would start off the show saying that, I guess the beginning of the show kind of says it, but I would encourage people to go ask questions over there. Why am I not finding it? I'm looking in the wrong list. So we do have a spreadsheet, though, that gets filled when people ask questions. I'll scroll down here. It's a spreadsheet that's been going since 2017. So there's actually hundreds and hundreds of questions in there. But we always default to questions from the audience if there's people asking specific questions as we're live here. I'm still scrolling, by the way. We don't really have a new one. The last one was from November. But has the red team done gun control? I'm guessing that was from right before the election. So meaning the Republicans? Have the Republicans done gun control? Yeah.
More than the Democrats.
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
Successfully.
That's not inaccurate. That is not inaccurate. They have to be involved. Like, there's no way that the Democrats can do it themselves. The Democrats push it all the time. Democrats literally campaign on it. But yeah, the Republicans have definitely been involved with it. Now, if there's 100 Democrats and 100 Republicans, it only takes 2 or 3 Republicans, and there's gun control. So it's not like we're saying. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying anything because I don't follow politics to know all of that deep. But yeah, they're certainly responsible for, I guess, all of it to some extent. And here's the thing: they're also the reason we had a 10-year lack of any kind of gun control, because it did get really political there in '94, and in '94 when all the Democrats and a couple of Republicans, again, they can't have done it. I don't know. I don't really actually know the circumstances. It's never 50-50. I mean, sometimes it's 50-50, and it's nice when it's 50-50 because then neither side really gets anything done. But I don't know what it was like in '94. I don't remember. But I do know that whenever '94 happened and they created the assault weapons ban, that pissed off a lot of people, and a lot of Republicans or a lot of places turned Republican as a result. So that was the last time I know of that there's been a real turnaround. Well, I shouldn't say that. This last election, wasn't there a lot of people turned to Republican or a lot of places turned to Republican this last election? But it's been since '94 that's happened. A
lot of people voted for Trump in this last election. I think a whole bunch of people were reading something into this that didn't happen. There were people that either voted for Trump or voted against Kamala. They didn't wholesale become Republicans.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I think the Republican Party is going to be, awakened to that next election cycle. That they made a mistake.
To like 2/3 the House and 2/3 the Senate is Republicans. It's pretty much still 50-50. It might have flipped a couple of seats here and there, but you're right. I think there's a lot of not a lot of great choices, and there was way more to it than. Well, I don't think very many people anymore consider themselves like, I'm a Republican and I'm a Democrat, period, right? Like, they might like Republicans more than Democrats, but I don't know too many people that are going to color themselves Republican. But I don't know about Democrats. I guess I just assume people are okay with Democrats, but there might be, I think, now that I'm thinking of like Tulsi Gabbard, she's one that left Democrats, right? But we don't have a big enough middle, independent or green or libertarian or whatever. We don't have a big enough other for people that are dissatisfied to jump onto. So I think we just get some kind of movement in the Democrats and the Republicans, but they still combine themselves.
Well, it's more. Truthfully, if we're being truthful, I think more people identify themselves as either conservative leaning or liberal leaning, more so than with the Democrat. Democrat or Republican, more so than with a Republican Party or Democratic Party.
Yeah, no DNR, more like
if you talk about the political leanings. Yeah.
Because
I'm more conservative or I'm more religious, or this is more important to me, but yeah.
That allows you to have a place that's not under the lines that the Republicans or Democrats have set themselves at this point. Because literally, we're talking about gun control. I'm not either one of them, but there's no fucking way I'm going to be a Republican if they keep voting for gun control. Like, come on, like, get your shit together. There's other things that they got issues with, but the number one is that they keep voting for freaking gun control and they think it's cool. And, like, oh, it's red flag laws or something. It's cool. Nah. But I was going to say that's at the federal level and senators and things like that. But when we start talking about locally, that's pretty much, I think, a Democrat thing. I don't think there's too many. I shouldn't say that because there's Republicans in Florida that have done some dumb shit with guns. And I could probably come up with some others. And I'm sure other people who live under that kind of shit can come up with Republicans who have come up with dipshit ideas on the local level. But I think state stuff tends to be a Democrat. Majority of anti-gun shit is Democrats. And I'm thinking of like Massachusetts, New Jersey. It's probably really easy for a Republican in Massachusetts and in New Jersey to be like, we love guns, because there's no way anything's going to happen about that, right? Like, they know that the Democrats are going to lock in no guns, so the Republicans can say anything they want pro-gun, and they're going to get anybody.
No, it's actually the opposite, bro. It's the opposite. I mean, what you said seems like it makes sense until you realize, no, these Republicans want to get elected too, and there's still Republicans in this state who might not be anti-gun, but they have no problem reaching across the aisle when it comes to common. If I have to do the air quotes, you can hear it in my voice. They reach across the aisle for common sense gun control. So yeah, it's nothing wrong with having a 10-round magazine limitation, and this is a freaking Republican talking. But there's nothing wrong with making armor piercing 5.7 illegal in New Jersey, even though it's already illegal on the federal level. What?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So these are the Republicans here in Jersey. Yeah.
Okay, well then that's good to know. So then, yeah, then I'm not going to give them any kind of. I was going to give them some slack because I figured at the lower levels I could just blame it all on Democrats. But yeah, I didn't think about that. See, I think that there could be so much more discussion out here. We tend to. I always get stuck in this kind of shit, but we talk about grip angles and red dots and I don't know, whatever's cool at the time. It used to be whatever rail you had on your AR. I was just as bored then, or whatever kind of grip. Like, holy moly, boring conversations. What kind of pistol grip I should get on my AR? Because obviously the answer is tango down, and then maybe mag pull, and leave it at that. But yeah, there's like a billion options, right? So everybody's wrist is different, everybody's hand's different, everybody's shoulder and lock up is different. So of course there's different ones, and nothing's going to be right for everybody. But that being said, I don't know, where were we going? I guess we were answering the question from the website on whether the red team has done gun control. I'm going to have to go back and say, even at the local level, then they have to be at least involved, really. And then if you really want to be a jerk, I'm not trying to be a Democrat or nothing, but if the Democrats are walking around doing all kinds of gun control because there's no competition, then it's some Republican shouldn't be standing up to give them some competition. and to give the other Republicans in the area a place to support, right? So the lack of fight is, I don't want to blame the victims, but at the same time, somebody's got to stand up and be the one that everybody can champion for. That being said, I'm going to go back.
The Republican Party.
Go ahead.
Republican Party, if the place is blue, won't even spend money on it. The state Republican parties avoid blue places. They don't want to participate. Even if the Republican Party does not put money in the places where Democrats, there's overwhelmingly Democrat. They just won't even attempt to run anyway. And it's annoying because you know what? People are fatigued. People are seeing what's going on and know the area has been ran by Democrats their entire life. And it's not the Republicans that are doing it because, like in a place like New Jersey, there's never a Republican majority. Anything bad that's happening and you want to blame on the Republicans in a state like New Jersey, it's like, bro, Republicans are never the majority here. So anything bad happening from your property tax to your kids' education to whatever, it's your democratically ran legislature that's been in charge of all of it. Sorry, but the last time there was a Republican, it was Chris Chunky Butt Christie. And we didn't have an overwhelming Republican majority then either. So, I mean, whatever. The Republican Party is responsible for their own failures in these areas just as much as the Democrats are.
But I'm going to go ahead and go back to one of the things I always harp on, and that's that we don't get a lot of, I don't know, like I don't want to say assistance or guidance, but there's not a lot of focus, maybe that's a better word, from any of the national level entities, because that could be anybody. You know, there could be an individual with this focus, but we don't really know how to challenge our politicians well. Like I think that there has been recently, last couple of years, some efforts, especially with when you think of like Rebecca Schmoy and who am I trying to think of in New Jersey, who is not, I don't think she's running for anything, but she's a lawyer.
Teresa Inacker.
Thank you.
Teresa Inacker is running for the board of directors, yeah.
Thank you. I know that they'll post, and they're just the two examples I can think of that are like the most much lawyers make. Maybe Laura Smith, she's a lawyer. She might have posted some stuff that I missed her. I'm not thinking of. But you know, they have like that like insight, and aside from them, where I guess I'm saying like I have seen some stuff from them, but aside from the stuff that they may have posted, there's really not a lot of like, here's something that we can all do. Hold this person. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. There might be some kind of things during elections where some of the organizations will say, here's the politicians that are, you know, the ones holding us back or at blame. But that's local level, that's state level, and that's sort of their job. But I'd like to see the national level organizations, or the national level entities, I should say, because it's not like the organizations are the only ones that could do this. They just have tens of millions of dollars in earnings every year that they could devote to some of to do this stuff. But there's huge entities out there that you know make a ton of money talking about, let's say, SHOT Show. Look how much money we make talking about SHOT Show every year, or maybe talking about the new guns or something, or some kind of new bullet that comes out, or anything like a shooting sport or even military shit. Like there's tons of people that are adjacent to guns that could be educating folks on what's going on with the parties, what's going on with the politicians, and how to do something about it instead of just being upset about it, instead of waving our fists in the air.
The waving of fists and gnashing of teeth, and it's directionless. It's like, well, who do we talk to? Well, one, you should have conversations going already, but you get bored with it because you want to hear about the new fill in the blank, whatever manufacturer you want to say. Or you want to watch someone shoot something. It's like, you know, in this fight for our freedoms, you can't tap in only when it's under attack, and only when it's under attack about something you care about. That's the bad part. It's like, No, you pretty much got to be on. You have to establish a relationship with your political leadership and let them know that the price will be paid. And you might also need to start donating to some of these causes, or not causes, but politicians, because once you're on the level of a donor, they pay more attention, whether you like to hear that or not.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about donating tens of thousands of dollars. I'm telling them donating $20. All of a sudden, you're a donor. You're more than a guy that only calls in when they're trying to ban something.
That's true. Just like when you go to events and you start to meet up with people, you know, and let's say you go to 3 events throughout the year and one of them's, you know, each one is in a different state, and you start meeting up with people at those events. That's going to happen because there's other people that go to all the events, or, you know, they just happen to go to the same ones you did, or they went to whatever, you know, so you see them in these different states, then they immediately know, like, you're one of the few people that do this, that, you know, are in all of these places all of the time. So it's the same kind of thing with a politician, right? Like, if you can be, if you're only talking to them once, that's something. Like, you talk to them. But if you talk to them and you're at an event and now you're at their sponsored thing, you know, where they show up and only people that you know, financially helping are there, yeah, you've got that extra access or whatever. That's a good point. It's bugging me that we're seeing the comments come up on the screen, and then like an hour and a half later, they show up over on the side here. I don't know if that's happening for you also, but I know you're using a phone, but it's just super distracting compared to before when I think StreamYard got them first. Maybe I'm wrong. So anyway, I guess we were kind of saying that there's no questions coming in from the spreadsheet over there, or from the website, I should say. So if anybody has any questions you want us to chat about, we've been kind of just rambling a little bit today, but nothing wrong with that.
Hey, have you seen? Did we talk about Wilson Combat last week?
In regards to, I feel like we did talk about Wilson, or somebody was talking about Wilson. What were we talking about?
Well, if you were in on the podcast on Tuesday, right? I think I saw you hop in for a little bit on the Firearms Radio Network.
Thing. I'm usually thinking around, but I'll, you know, so I'll, like, if I got to do a bunch of work on my computer, I'll wait till one of your some podcasts on, and that's when I do my computer work. So I almost always am doing something when I'm listening to a podcast, but I think I listened to the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it was here last week or whether it was on the podcast last week, because I just heard about it. You know, Wilson Combat, if people don't know, they make semi-custom 1911s. They make ARs, and they also own scattergun technologies. But anyway, they opened up something like their own version of Performance Center, like their own version of Smith & Wesson Performance Center, or somebody's custom shop. And they came out with something called Project One from Division 77, I think it's called. So they just came out with a new handgun that has all the bells and whistles of, not only is the barrel ported, but it's also compensated. And it's just something that looks pretty cool. But I like the fact that they stepped up and found out somehow to create just another level of expensive firearm from a place that already makes an expensive firearm. You know what I mean? When you talk about businesses doing what they do, I'm like, how in the heck did you, what? I can't wait for Nighthawk Custom to come up with a Nighthawk custom shop.
Seriously. Well, when they're, I guess when, well, I don't know. As I say, is if they run out of stuff to do, they're going to redo some stuff. But if you're, like I was going to say, they probably get requests all the time too. I can't even imagine how busy Wilson is. I did a thing one time. They're the largest YouTube channel. So they were already massive within the shooting sports, and then just in general, gun shops and stuff. Everybody knows Wilson. So once they started doing the YouTube stuff, I would think that the demand for their stuff is immense. There's DJ out there. You got your stuff down for shot already? I asked you about that.
What I'm doing is wait until after Thursday, so I know exactly how much funds I have, so I can go ahead and buy my ticket. Everything else is done. It's just buying the ticket, and I'm gonna do a couple of raffles online and try to get some money in a PayPal account to pay for things like food when I'm out in Vegas. But I should have enough to pay for the ticket to fly out there, and yeah, the ticket, and hopefully I can raise a little bit of money for some food and stuff. I'll put together some SHOT Show prize package with SHOT Show swag and SHOT Show bags here now and send out. And I also got a knife from Civivi that I'm going to throw into the mix and just get it out to people so we can raise some money for this next month. And if I can make enough to just pay for the food without it ever coming out of my regular bank account, that makes it easier on my family.
I hear that. I've been trying to figure out what I'm going to do for stuff up there. And yeah, just wondering. We're getting closer and closer. Something like 34 days away. 37 days away.
Mm-hmm. Went out shooting yesterday. Competed in a was it PPC or PCC? Police Combat Challenge, Police Combat Competition. Pretty much is the old police qual, old school police qual, 7 yards, 15 yards, 25 yards, and 50 yards simulated shooting. Had some fun. I think I scored 478 or something last night, which is pretty decent. I just had a friend of mine send me a text because I posted my score and I posted the target because I don't care what people think. I'm having fun with my friends and hopefully, getting better at it. So I'm not going to be shamed because I'm working to get better. But I try to encourage other people to do it too. Don't let your ego get involved, man. You really need to know if you're going to do this, if you're going to use a firearm for self-defense and have it out there. How good are you under a stressor? So find a competition that uses the thing you have. And that's what I do. So that's why I compete in different things. Also, I try to encourage people. I'm old, my knees crack, I got gray hair, I do not move anywhere near as fast as I used to, and I don't have to be in first place. But I should know my limitations. I should have challenges thrown in front of me, especially if I'm going to carry this thing out in public. I should know how good or how bad I am. I should know whether I can hit something at 50 yards or not, whether it's simulated or not, because that target is really freaking small. Even though it's at 25 yards, they've shrank it down. So it's simulating doing a 50-yard shot with a handgun standing. We do it both hands. We do it sitting, kneeling, standing strong hand barricade, standing weak hand barricade. And that's, and hey, listen, sometimes you're good, sometimes you're bad, but at least you know where you're hitting at. So I have fun doing it, and I try to encourage others to do it too. You're never as good as you think you are.
This at indoor range?
Yeah, this is indoor range. I did it last night in Old Bridge, New Jersey.
Right. So then this is the paper going back or the targets going back and forth on the target.
Oh no, we're able to walk out. We're able to walk out over here at Old Bridge. The target stand is in the back, and we move back and forth.
Oh, okay. So this is like when it's closed, or is this a range that they do that in exclusively?
It's a private range. It's a club.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a club. So they have 1, 2, I think 3 different disciplines and hosts throughout the month. It was police challenge was Friday, next Friday or last Friday, one of the two. They had like an IDPA outlaw kind of match because it doesn't strictly abide by all the IDPA rules, but those guys use it as practice, to run real matches. Then they also have speed, 22 speed. What the hell? Steel, something steel. Anyway, you're using a 22 and you're shooting 5 pieces of steel on a timer. So we have stuff like that, and I try to participate in all of them. My knee was really messing with me earlier this year, so I never got out as much as I usually wanted to. But I try to get out every month and shoot. And sometimes when my knees aren't bad and I have time, I get out like weekly and shoot in the competition. I use a 22 a lot of the times, or I use 9 mil because get out and practice, man. No matter what you do, even if it's a 22 pistol sight, as Steve Fisher says, sights and triggers, bro. Sights and triggers. Pulling the trigger, lining the sight. The more you're able to do it without, what is it? The more you're able to shoot well without conscious thought, unconscious competence, the better off you are in an emergency because it gives you more time to notice things and see things and maybe even to avoid a situation or even think with a firearm in your hand. All this stuff is really important in the self-defense scenario. And I don't think enough people give it credit. A lot of people just want to go and punch holes through paper, not understanding that there's other things that build up when you do this. If you know how to reload without having to look at your firearm the entire time, if you remember, hey, take cover, shoot from behind cover, make yourself the smallest target as possible, because you don't have to think about front sight alignment, trigger squeeze, breath control. You're already going to do all that automatically because you've shot at competitions, you've trained yourself a little bit more than just I have a gun and I'm good to go. More than just dry firing at the freaking light switch on the wall maybe once a month. It just makes you a better defender. And I think that's why I try to encourage more and more people to do that. Be a better defender. Take part in these competitions so you are an asset in a situation like that, or you're just not poop scared and making bad decisions with a gun in your hand.
So a whole bunch of stuff. I don't like to interrupt you, but I end up interrupting you half the time. But I didn't make any notes this time. But there's like so many things I was thinking of as you were talking there. Just because we're like an hour something in, we wanted to keep the conversation going and always asking a specific question. First, I think I was going to ask.
Okay.
I think I was going to. I'm trying to think of how to ask it. I was going to ask if the. I'm thinking like the modern. I don't know what to call. I don't want to be offensive or nothing, but you know, like the person who's become a gun owner in the last few years, and maybe even, you know, I don't know what to say, but you know, like a polite way of saying like somebody who's bought a gun recently. A lot of what you said there is so valid because. I don't know, like I can't use driving as an analogy because not everybody's been driving their whole lives. And, you know, I'm trying to think maybe watching television, like the first couple of times you watch television, it's awkward and you're trying to figure out the channels and you miss something and you're all upset. And then you figure out you can watch it whenever you want, or, you know what I mean? Like it becomes old hat. Maybe video games is a way to say it. Like, you know, like the first time you play a video game, you're shitty. And then after a while, you realize, you know, you're really good at the game. So everything you just explained there was, you know, a better way of saying with the gun. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking, how much of that did some of us who grew up with BB guns and grew up with regular guns and then just have had guns our whole lives and we're super old, like how much of that, like I don't want to, you know, I'm just saying, like if I needed to take something apart without looking at it, like I could take pretty much everything apart without looking at it. Not just guns though. It's just I'm old. So I've taken apart, you know, a lot of things a lot of times. So it's just massive experience, right? And once you've got massive experience, you have an intimate knowledge of that thing. So coming into playing and knowing when to use it and how it's, you know, understanding what it's going to do and respond. Like a lot of that you get as a little kid, or some of us got as little kids with BB guns and playing around and stuff. And if you'd never had any of that, right? And I'm not saying one's good and one's bad. I'm just saying like there's differences, right? But if you're an adult and you're just getting into guns, I guess the big question is, I'm just been explaining the two different types of people. how long does it take to get that familiarity, that comfort, that like intimate knowledge of the machine, to where, I mean, like you described, I think like being comfortable with it, and like I'm comfortable with anything I need to do with a gun. Like I'm not trying to be a jerk or nothing or brag or whatever. It's just that I'm super comfortable with them. I've just had them in my hands for my entire life. Like I'm not discomfortable with them at any point. And I'm wondering, if someone's new to guns and they're apprehensive and they came to guns, at what point, or do they even ever get to that? And how would we know? Does anybody ever ask them that stuff?
So, doing a diversity shoot, I'm not trying to dunk on people and make them feel inferior in any way. I'm introducing you to this thing, and there's a lot of other levels to this. But when I talk about it person to person, like, well, how do I know whether I'm good at something? Come to one of these competitions, and for $10 to $20 at your local range, you can at least see where people who look like you and have regular jobs, where they're at. I'm not saying you need to compare yourself to them, but you'll know when you look around and either you're looking at your gun like you've never seen one before, and you're watching people do smooth transitions, or even loading a mag to get ready to shoot. Because we have new people come in all the time, and no one's trying to intimidate you. Everybody's trying to help you. So when you walk in the door and we go, okay, this is your first time at the event. Come on, you're going to be the only ones on the range. Let's see how you handle your firearm. Well, that's somebody outside of you, outside of your head. These are some people that already have what they consider a standard, that they're just allowing you to be on the range and shoot with them, but they have a standard in their head of what that is. Your standard may be unrealistic about what that is. You may think it's lower or higher. Well, they're going to let you know what it is. And then you're going to get out there and you're going to shoot with people, and you're going to see how they handle guns compared to you. I mean, I've had my butt kicked by over 200 points at these events. At IDPA events, I'm the slowest moving, missinest dude you've ever seen. But I wouldn't know how I compare to others until I see it. And I'm not going to beat myself up because I'm not winning, but at least I know what a standard is at that range on that day. You got to get out and let other people see you. And you got to look at other people. You can't just live in your head, and you can't look over shoulders when you come into just a regular square range to have a practice and shoot a zombie target. You're going to actually have to get out there. Another way is taking a class. And I don't mean, and I want to put out there, I don't mean a $700 to $1,000 class taught by a former special forces guy. I mean the class at your local range, it might cost you between $75 and $200. And it's a 1 or 2 day class. You get out there and you see at least what the industry standard is and what expected of you from a good firearms instructor. And to figure out what a good firearms instructor, there's a whole conversation involving that. But you got to get out of your own head, and you got to get to the range.
CNT is saying even if you get into guns late, with
Mhm.
on your own or with a good amount of training, right? Even on your own with a good amount of training material online right now, you can get comfortable with firearms. Oh, I agree, and it's probably easier than it's ever been. So before we'd read like a magazine, and they'd be like, "This training existed," and you'd know like that it existed, but you didn't get any kind of an in-depth thing about the training. You just, hey, this school, I went to it or something, like, it was like this. But nowadays the curriculums are online, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although
Yeah,
it's
curriculum's online, but again, so I watched something. What the hairy heck is it called? Because I just saved it to my thing. I watched this entire video about guys who trained themselves, and it was about how they train themselves with their friends on some property. And they're talking about, and I'm not gonna beat
firearm.
them up because they all train themselves. Yeah, yeah, with firearms. They train themselves with firearms on the property on their own, and they're talking about, yeah, we messed up a lot, we did this, but you should get out, you should shoot at least twice a month. And I'm listening to them, and I agree with a lot of what they said. But as I'm also listening to them, I'm like, you could have probably done with a couple of formal trainings, and you would be better, and you wouldn't have wasted as much time and ammo. And also, if you're only shooting and your friends are what you're looking at, you could be leading your friends down a path of inefficient. You know what I mean? Like learning bad habits, learning things that you could actually learn more efficiently the first time and not have to unlearn them later. Because I don't want to poop on anybody, and I try to be positive because any a hole could be negative. And I'm like, hey, bro, take a formal class. Take a formal basic class. So there's a couple of things you get down in case you take classes with other people. Vocabulary. You just don't say stop shooting, cease fire. That's a real term. And it's an industry standard type of term. Downrange, uprange, just things that if you've never taken any training, you may not use or may not know that it is like an industry phrase. Not that calling things that is really important, but if you've made a YouTube video about it that's a half hour long and you're discussing it and you've done editing and you've done all that stuff, you need to learn those terms because it just reflects better on not only you, but you and your boys. When you do go somewhere else, you sound like somebody that's put in the training that you've actually put in and not somebody that shoots trash with their friends like one weekend a year at a rock quarry somewhere. There's a difference. Being able to shoot, move, and do all those things, cool. What equipment to buy? That stuff you can learn at a class because you'll have 10 other guys that bought stuff and have experience. And it cuts down on your own learning curve. You don't have to make every mistake yourself. You can make other people, you can learn from other people's mistakes and they'll tell you what they were and where they've gone to improve and all that stuff. So I say it's great you train. And if you can only train by yourself because you live somewhere like I came from, that pretty much you got to drive 2 to 3 hours one way and then like get a hotel. If you even do a 1 day train, I mean, if you do anything more than a 1 day training, yeah, fine. But get that training first to know at least the basics of what you don't know. It'll cut down on time.
Yeah, didn't want to interrupt you again, but the as far as the going to classes, I think you probably have to go to 3 at least to see what
Hmm.
like you're saying, just the general ways that instructors behave. But then you go to 2 and you're going to see maybe the one way or the other, or 2 ways that are similar. But if you go to 3, you'll start to see the spectrum a little bit. You'll go, oh, okay, these 2 are like, let's say military versus police versus competition versus something else. Like they're going to be different types of training or whatever. And you can kind of tell just from the way they say stuff, like you're saying. So I think there's that. Like you're going to learn a lot from the instructors themselves. But then to reiterate what you said about the classes themselves, is a big reason you go to a class is to learn the curriculum. I'd say that's probably 40%. Then there's like 30% or 25% or whatever's left. You're going to get that experience from the instructor and what they're giving you and the way that they give it to you. But then the rest of it is, like you just said, learning from the mistakes of others, learning or seeing what the other class is doing, seeing all the different guns they're using, seeing all the different holsters they're using. So go into one class, and let's say the class has you draw, and that's something that you don't normally do at a range. And there's about a million different ways, like flavors. It's just like playing guitars or something. Like you can buy a guitar all you want, and that doesn't make you a guitar player. You can buy a book on how to play guitar, and that doesn't make you a guitar player. You can watch YouTube videos all you want. You can strum with your friends, and you can make music, right? You could probably get pretty fucking good. But go into a teacher, go into a coach, they're going to show you in a regimented way that people have done through all time. And there's probably like 6 or 8 different ways to learn the guitar. I know of at least 2, so there's probably more. So, like let's say left-handed, right-handed, Spanish, I don't know, different heavy metal, jazz. Like there's different ways to learn to play the guitar. And then once you get into something like heavy metal, guess what? I think there's more than one type of heavy metal, right? You could probably play that in different ways, right? So you get into guns, it's no different. So you're going to get I always like to use the Army and Navy. No, yeah, Army and Navy. In the Army, we're in a helicopter and you're pointing your guns down because you don't want to shoot an engine. And in a Navy, you're in a boat. You don't want to shoot the boat, so you're pointing your guns up. Neither one is wrong at the time, but they're both wrong at sometimes, right? So it's just like that, right? So you're going to take these different classes, you're going to learn stuff, but now you go to one class and you learn some stuff, and or let's say you do something and you learn some stuff on your own. You see how your holster works, your gun works, your arms and legs work. But if you go to a class with 6 other people, unless you're really focused on your only, your tunnel vision or something, you're going to see what their holsters and their guns and their arms and legs are doing. They're going to see how, their stuff is working. You're going to have times to talk as you're reloading or as you're eating lunch or whatever. And, there's just times when you're taping targets or something. You're going to be able to experience what these other students are doing. You take that second class, and now how many guns do you experience in one class? How many guns do you experience in 2 classes? So you're having a conversation with somebody and they say, I've been to the range and I've seen SIGs never fail. And it's like, okay, at the range, how many times does a gun fail? Like, what stresses on a gun at a range? You got to have a pretty weird situation to have a gun fail at the range, really. But at a class, like, guns can fail for like 1,600 different reasons. And, might see, I don't want to keep picking on SIGs. I don't think there's anything wrong with SIG, but, brand XYZ never fails at the range. But I've been to 6 classes and I don't own an XYZ, but I've seen XYZs fail from like 14 different ways from 3 different people, in 16 different days. Tony gets really offended when you talk about brand XYZ. He left. So we got some training haters out there. So I've had to defend training before. I'm a big fan of training, but I'm not a big fan of, is it doctrine or something? Like, I don't believe that anybody's right or wrong. Either way, like, nobody's right all the time. Probably nobody's wrong all the time. There's things that I like better and not, and I think are more realistic. But anyway, I think you get what I was saying. I was reiterating mostly that get so much more, like, it's like an exponential amount of education by going to a few classes.
Yep.
And learning about all the different things I'm talking about. Plus, we didn't even get into, like, just you're going to go to a class, and let's say the first time you go, you do everything right and everything was perfect, but then you go to by the time you go to the third, maybe you'll get dehydrated, maybe you'll show up and you got to pee the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally different if you got to pee the whole time and there's nowhere to pee, or just fill in the blank with all kinds of weird shit that's going to happen because you're a human, right? Like, you got bad sleep, arm hurts, like you got to fight with somebody and you're just distracted. Like, going to class and it's perfect is nice, but go to class 16 times and you'll see a lot of different stuff with classes. And what you'll do is you'll see how you react under stress. Like, damn it, I suck. And now I'm going to, it's because my car's falling apart and I'm not sure I'm going to get home from tonight and I got to go sleep and come back tomorrow. Or like you said, like, I've been to classes where it's like, damn, I paid a lot of money to go to this hotel and drive up here, and I'm thinking about, like, going to Vegas and stuff to go to stuff. Like, that's a lot of money to go to a class, and then am I getting enough out of it or whatever? Like, there's just a lot going on, and then do you screw yourself out of your own, what's the word, like, attention span because you're worrying about your own, something else. So anyway, there's a lot of things that you get from training if you think about it. You get it. You allow yourself to get it from training.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't think of that. The whole thing, well, what happens to you? Because I've had stuff happen to me at training. I know I've talked about when I had a situation with my blood sugar level when I was training at Train and Learn. And I went back to training after my emergency was over and everybody allowed me to go back and get back out there and start training again. Yeah, I was diminished, but I still got in there because, dude, I'm in St. Louis. I've driven halfway across America. I'm going to get as much as I can out of this while I still can, whether I'm feeling 100% or not. Let's get busy. I had got dehydrated at a Chris Costa class. And all of a sudden, my hands started cramping up, like locking like I have palsy. You know what I mean? It was like clunk, clunk, and my fingers were locked into a like crab position. I knew what it was because I've had it happen before. And I got in the vehicle. I drove down to the convenience store. I picked up some pickles and some mustard, and I was able to get my hands and everything working again. I picked up some what do you call that? Gatorade and water, and I freaking slammed it, and I got myself back together. And it was painful, but I went right back. So you work your way through. So yeah, the good days are great, but the bad days, it takes focus. No one's going to wait for you to have a great day to attack you. You could be having one of the worst days of your life. Things can go sideways. Uh, and
They pick on
you need
prey.
to be able to function.
They look for
Yep.
that.
Oh, believe me, I learned that at work. Don't look like prey. Don't look like prey. When I'm not feeling well and I'm feeling like hammered poop, don't let an inmate see that. Don't make an inmate see that. Don't walk around limping, even though my legs were hurting like a son of a gun. Yeah, it was a little bit, but I had to power through it, getting to point A to point B. They attack you. That's it. What else? Take training because they'll make you do things you're uncomfortable with. Very few people practice what they suck at. And training, all right, cool. We're gonna shoot weak hand now. We're gonna shoot prone with a handgun. We're gonna diminish you in some kind of way, and you still have to operate this thing that you carry for self-protection. I remember one of the classes had us soak our hands in an igloo cooler with ice in it, and then have to operate your firearm with cold hands as if you were outside in the wintertime. And you had to protect yourself.
Or you got in a car wreck and you're just not working 100% right then.
Mhm. Well, think about this. If you're outside and it's wintertime and your car goes down and you've been under the hood trying to figure out what's going on and you're waiting for AAA and the car's not running, your hands are now colder than they were if you only between running in from work into your car, driving home. Your dexterity is diminished. You're not practicing that,
Or if a
but a
bad guy's
class will get you to do that.
car, if bad guy's going to steal your car, are they going to wait until you, or are they going to rob it before you change the flat tire, or wait till you're done changing the flat tire before they come up and take the keys? So that's when your hands are going to be
100%. 100%. And you learn that. Hey, dude, can't stress enough. You don't know what you don't know. I get frustrated sometimes, especially if it's somebody I care about. And you don't want to argue with people, but you do want to tell them there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of things you don't know that you'll learn in training. I know your granddad taught you to shoot. Great. And you can probably outshoot me. But the scenarios that come up with, did your granddad teach you to shoot weak hand only? Did your granddad teach you to shoot from as if you were knocked down and have to shoot from your back? You know what I mean? Did your granddad teach you to shoot up close while pushing someone off you with your offhand? What is it? Dang, I can't even think of the word. When you shoot, when your gun's not in contact with yourself, but pulled up against yourself. So someone can't snatch it out of your hand because you have more control over it than they do. All those things you practice or at least learn about. Retention. Yeah. Fire from retention. Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff where, I watched a video, so therefore I'm going to go do some crazy shit that I seen on a video. What you see on a video, what a student might be doing because of what they got told, and then let's say, so here's some instruction. Now the students are going to go try it, and the student tries it for the first time, and they make an attempt, but it's not, what they're going for, but they do something, and that's filmed, and then that goes around. Right? Like there's that potential. Like so somebody just being a spaz because they're trying it for the first time. Now maybe 3 times later they got it down and they shoot normally, but that first time they did it like a spaz. Well, that's usually the one you get a chuckle of, or somebody's trying to make a splash or exploit the whole thing. That's what they're going to send around, and that's what's going to get shared or whatever. But so anyway, that's like one thing that can happen. But anyway, I think that's just throwing that out there, that's a facet of um, training. I don't know why I was bringing that up, but then DJ's got a point out here. But before that, I was going to also say that before we go too far from it, you mentioned earlier about, if everybody's out just on their own properties, or the thing you were watching, I guess, was a bunch of guys just out training on their own. And I'm not crapping on that. There's nothing wrong with that, except that it could be dumbass. And if you're dumbass, then there's something wrong with it. So one way to make sure that you're not a dumbass about it, and one thing that we used to do is when we were all into training a lot, we had plenty of ammo, and we were all super curious about all these different classes and instructors and stuff, and we weren't all able to go to everything. Is whenever somebody went to a class, whenever it was possible afterwards, we would all get together at this place that we had. It was essentially like a side of a hill, so we could put up our targets in the side of this hill and just kind of shoot at the side of a hill. And we go out there like on a Saturday or whatever after somebody went to a class, and they would kind of show us whatever highlights, tips, drills, whatever was cool from that class, and then we'd shoot some of that stuff. And we were we were coming up, I forgot where we pretty much the dot drill, which is a piece of 8x10, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with the dots on it, and that's been around for a long time. I forget the name of the person who created it, but that had already been a thing. This was like mid 2000s, and that was already a thing. And thought it was cool. It's 50. It's a box of 50 rounds that you use with one piece of paper that you can just photocopy or print, or just make. It's not hard to make the piece of paper with 6 dots on it, or is it 9 dots, whatever it is. But for shooting rifles, and because we were outdoors, we could do whatever we wanted. We were trying to come up with a drill that was more like, I can't remember it exactly anymore, but it had something to do with prone at the long distance, and then you'd kneel at some distance, and then so you'd shoot prone. I think it was 100 rounds, or maybe it was 50, but let's say you shot a couple of rounds prone, then you would go to your knees and shoot kneeling, and then maybe shoot as you were moving to the next. I forget anymore, but we'd try to incorporate movement and doing stuff, and maybe there was a barricade in there or something. So we were trying to incorporate all these different things, these elements that we would get as we went to different trainings and stuff. And that's one of the reasons we got together and talked about what the classes were like, so that we could add stuff to our big ass drill that we were coming up with. And then, whenever we were bored, we would shoot this drill. And the whole point of a drill is to shoot against yourself, right? Like you're going to shoot it, and then sometime later you're going to shoot it, and then sometime later you're going to shoot it, and you're going to compare your accuracy and your timings and everything to see if you're getting better, or if you're sloppy or whatever, if you're getting worse, or if you're staying consistent or something. So anyway, that's what I was getting at, is by going to these classes, you get to experience not only the instructors and the students, but then you get to bring back to whoever it is you shoot with, to your friends and family or whoever, all that experience. And since they're doing the same thing, hopefully, it's becoming a big mix of everybody coming back. And I've heard this from my whole life, but one of the best ways to remember something, one of the best ways to like ingrain something that you've been taught, is to teach it. So learning something and then knowing you're coming back to teach it to others will help you a lot to retain the info, because you're absorbing it in a way that you're going to want to get it right back out, and that's going to help you get it in or keep it. And then once you've taught it to somebody, like it good. And we got pretty good at like I say, developing I don't know what to call it, like an after action protocol or workflow or something to try to, it costs a lot of money to go to a class. I would go for free all the time because I was auditing. I never shot the classes, so I would go to one and come back and show everybody, and that was my opportunity to shoot the stuff, because I don't watched everybody for a weekend or whatever. But the other guys, they paid good money to go to a class. They wanted to get as much out of it as possible. So, giving them that extra, retention or something, and then, getting us a glimpse of it, it was pretty cool. It was for years we did that.
Yeah. I dude. Okay. A lot of people, if you don't know, Ranger school, when you talk about Ranger school, a lot of people think it's to make a commando and everybody goes to the Ranger regiment, right? And now they're with the 75th Ranger Battalion. No, Ranger school is the Army leadership course. You go to Ranger school to learn to be a better soldier on another level and more fit, whatever that is. But mostly it's so you can go back to your regular unit and make your regular unit better for what you learned at Ranger school. And really, if you got a friend group that you're putting together of dudes to train, everybody doesn't have to go train. It's exactly like you said. This dude can make one training this year or, in this 3 month time period. And he comes back and he tries to remember everything. He takes notes and he defers it on to his guys. And the next guy that goes to one does the same thing. Look, if you have 6 dudes, if you get 3 formal training classes in, but you guys meet up twice a month and disseminate what you learned, the whole group gets elevated. When you learn what the SUL position is with your handgun, just having it pointed down. Well, when you go to your next class, you already know some stuff that the first timers won't know. And you get to go to different instructors. Don't all go to the same instructor. Go to different instructors so you learn different ways to do things. And yeah, go to an instructor that have, police training. Go to an instructor that has military training. Go to an instructor that does competition training, because shooting quickly and accurately is a bonus, regardless whether you do it on a clock or whatever. Learning things makes you better. Even learning things and going, yeah, that's not applicable to this situation, but at least I know it, is better than not knowing. One of the things I think that's different depends on where you go. And what you did is loading a shotgun. When you do a military or police training, you load a shotgun one way, but when you're doing competition training, you load a shotgun another way. But knowing them both is a good thing.
Exactly.
When you load into when you load in a shotgun tactically, I guess that's one way to go military police. A tactical shotgun reload is different than a competition shotgun reload. But a competition shotgun reload is a lot faster to get the rounds in the gun and a lot slower to get the gun into action if something goes down before you finish loading. Cool to know both things. What if you're trying to top off real quick? Because the threat is no longer a threat right now, but you want to get that gun fully loaded because a shotgun only has a few rounds, 9 at the most before you really become really unwieldy. But boom, 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 you already loaded that sucker up, even though your threat has stopped for now, but something might pop up later. You got your gun back in your shoulder. But if you don't know the threat has stopped, but you've already fired 3 rounds, it's better to do the slower tactical reload where you still have the firearm in your shoulder and you're loading 1 round at a time and making sure the bad guy or threat, because it's not always a person, didn't come back. If you shot at some wild animal and it moved off, or a pack of them, and they ran away, but might be circling to hit you from the other side. You never know, but you want to top that shotgun off. These are all things that are good to know. And if you've never, my granddaddy taught me to shoot. Granddaddy taught you to upland bird hunt, bro. Totally different. Totally different. Or your granddad shot clays, which again, not saying anything's bad about it, but it can't cover everything. And you don't know what you don't know. Training helps. Local trainers are great. You don't have to spend a bunch of money to go to somebody who's Instagram cool. Learn from local people because you can build relationships with them. Especially if you go to 2, 3 classes from someone and go, hey, I got 4 friends. I know the class is usually $150, but if I can come in with 5 or 6 of us, can we do it for $125 each? Yeah, sure. You know what I'm saying? You can save yourself some money if you build a relationship with people too.
Well, plus that's always a cool thing to do if you can, because then your friends are getting all taught the same thing at the same time. You're all on the same track. Literally couldn't ask for a better deal.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm going to throw out Chris's question here. He said he just got back from the range. He's not even looked yet, but do they make anti-walk trigger pins for the AK platform? Oh yeah, they definitely do.
Ooh.
So I saw that you got an AK on the cheap and then rebuilt it. I didn't look at the video, or I didn't hear the part where you got the origin of it. So was it a Wasser, did you say? But whatever the origin is, I guess it doesn't matter if your trigger pin's walking. As long as it's not ovaling or whatever, like that can happen on a cheap ass old fashioned one, but that's not going to happen on yours more than likely. So it's walking is moving in and out of its hole, right? Like going to the left or right. So I've had what I was just talking about was when the material itself turns into an oval instead of a circle. So now it's wobbling around. I'm guessing it's not that, because that's not really an issue on modern AKs. But going to the left or right, like just moving out in the channel itself, is uncommon, because there's a detent in it, like there's a channel in it, or whatever you want to say, like there's a ridge in it that springs can snap into or push on that stop it from doing that. And whenever he says what he's got, give us some insight. But essentially, yeah, you can get either a new trigger pin, which is just a rod that goes across there, and it'll have a channel in it, or whatever you want to call it, like a detent. I don't know what to call that. But a channel in it. And then there's, I don't know, a couple of 3 different ways that are pretty common that you'll get either like a shepherd's foot or a claw or a piece of wire type of thing that will kind of weave in between the receiver stud, or whatever you call it, like this, the receiver support, and then what's the other pin? The trigger pin and the hammer pin, I guess. So something will weave in between of them, or lock in with all of them, and that'll hold your trigger pin in place. The shepherd's foot is like a piece of metal, and I forget, there was one country that actually used them, I think, and then everybody here in the United States started making them, or at least a couple of people started making them also. Tapco made them, I think, or somebody. And then there's a couple other like US options, which are usually pretty much nicer than the options from Russia or whatever Soviet stuff. Me personally, I used an E-clamp. I don't know if you ever used E-clamps, or E-clip, I guess, not clamp, E-clip. And it's just a weird looking Pac-Man looking piece of metal that is a clip, and you can put it on that channel that I'm talking about, and it just clips in there. And I've always used those. Sometimes you can put 2. When I was building, sometimes somehow something would be out of spec a little bit, and I'd put 2 in there, almost like a shim. But again, modern built ones, you probably don't have to worry about that. Just put 1 in there. But I do those, and I don't know if that'll work for you or not, but that's as simple as like going to Ace, bringing your pin with you, find the one that clips on there. I would send you one. I think I had, whenever I was building, I ended up like buying a million of them, 100 of them or something. Like I have enough to do a million of them, because they'd come out once in a while. I'm not saying they're perfect. They pop out, but they cost enough to have 6 of them in your kit or whatever. I don't know. Do you have any?
That's why I never had an AK. I never owned an AK. I didn't even like the way the recoil impulse felt, because I've only shot inexpensive AKs. You know what I mean? My friend had an R. What does Sean have? What's the long barreled AK that comes with the bipod? RPK?
Mm-hmm. Well,
RP,
yeah. RPD. Well, RPK. Yeah.
RPD. Anyway, he had that, and I shot that on the bipod. I thought it was cool, but it was like, I mean, it's a fun gun. It's fun to introduce people to something, because you can throw out the bipod and have them shoot from the table. And even if they're a new shooter, it's not going to be too heavy. It's not going to be uncontrollable because it's on a bipod. But I just really didn't get the AK thing. I didn't like the way they felt. And then at one of my diversity shoots, one of the guys came through, and he had a Meridian Defense AK. So a really nicely done, probably $2,000 AK. and it was a whole different feel. I shot it, and it was really nice. I also fired, dang, who the brothers that built AKs back in the day? Starts with a K.
Hmm.
Uh, American company,
Brothers.
American AK builders, American AK builders. Krebs Custom, right?
Oh, Mike. He's not a brother,
Krebs
but yeah.
Custom. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
He still builds.
yeah. For some reason, I see it two people. Yeah, so I shot a Krebs Custom, and those AKs were really nice, well made. Recoil impulse wasn't verboten. I just really liked it, but of course, these are very expensive guns. Those were the AKs I dug. The inexpensive ones, I just didn't like the way they feel. There was nothing about it that I couldn't get better with an AR. I liked the idea of them, but the implementation didn't work for me. My SKS, I loved it. You know what I mean? So it was a different thing. I never really got into the AKs, which I think is cool. Don't need to get into everything. Plus, it gets expensive after a while when you keep, buying every platform.
Oh, I
I already
can
have lever actions.
ARs get pretty
I
bad.
got lever actions, pump actions. Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
go, oh, well, an AR is pretty standard and blah, blah, blah. But then, you have like enough parts laying around that it only takes like 3 more parts and you almost got a gun. And then you buy 6 more parts and you got, I got 3 left over. And then before you know it, they pile up and you got, 4 people with a lot of ARs. So it happens. And it's not like cheaper or nothing. It's just different money, right?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, so I'm never gonna say one's better than the other or whatever. It's just what I had at the price point that I was at that time. I didn't like, so I'd rather not spend the money on that. And I mean, I've collected ARs over time, but it's like, hey, I caught this upper on sale. 6 months later or whatever, I got this lower. Hey, somebody sent me this thing, and I can slowly build an AR. But to slowly put together an AK, you need different tools. You need to actually build an AK. You don't snap one together. So pretty much you could change furniture on an AK. You might able to, add little things, but you're not going to actually build an AK with the few tools that you can build an AR with. I built an AR at the kitchen table with a knife, a vice grip, and a hammer.
Well, you're an AR armorer and you're an AK gunsmith. So that's the way I look at it. Because you got to, like you say, you got to have presses and grinders and pull off rivets and re-rivet, right? And then you end up having, by the time you do all that, you got to refinish the thing. So that means sandblasting it half the time or chemical. Anyway, like there's a lot of work to an AK, you're right. And without all that, and the only exceptions to that are all the home tools that you can buy, and I have a chunk of those. So like that's definitely a thing where you can build it on your kitchen table using screw pressure instead of any kind of air hammers or rivets or anything. You can smash rivets using screws, using fixtures, and those are super effective. Like they actually make some of the cleanest AKs, and they're super easy. But you're talking an investment, 500, 600 more to put all the tools together to be able to build it like that. But, or if you have, like you're saying, or you have access to a shop with all that kind of stuff. And I learned on the bigger tools, and I had access to the bigger tools. So you have access to the tools, you have access to the knowledge. Once you've built 1 or 2, you got the skill set. Then it's a different story. I'm going to put together as many as I want because, they were cheap at the time. But that's definitely different than an AR where it's, once you figure it out by putting maybe 3. I mean, I think 3 is a good number. Like you're going to put 1 together and you think, oh, that was easy or hard, right? You put a second one together and you're like, oh, that was easier or hard or whatever, right? You put that third one together and that's where you or that's when you scratch something. You're like, oh, now I see why people say to buy that other tool, or now I figure out why everybody hates this part that I never had any trouble with before. But then you're done. You've figured it out. Like you say, I'm trying to think of like on an AR, you'll figure out things, or at least you'll probably get to a point at some point having a bunch of ARs where you figure out that like the buffer weight is screwing around or your dwell is wrong, or you'll have like
the retention pin, the trigger pin, the trigger guard retention pin, and how to bang that through instead of freaking beating on it and then breaking one of the ears off. And now you can throw away your old or receiver because you can't put a trigger guard on it because you broke it off.
Oh, that
Like,
happened. Yeah, you're saying now. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like all that little stuff. And I
But there
encourage
are
people to do it, man.
It takes a while for all
Go
that
ahead.
shit to happen on an AR. I'm just saying it takes a while. Most ARs don't deal with all that shit. Most AR people.
No, not at all. And I never want to create a gatekeeping moment. Just there are things out there. You can do it. It's great. I just like firearms, man. And the more you get into them and touch them and work with them, the more confident you'll be with taking them apart, cleaning them. I tell people that all the time. Take your gun apart, clean it. Empty the firearm. Make sure there are no rounds in the room because complacency is usually when accidents happen. Make sure there are no rounds in the room. Take your gun apart. Clean it, oil it, lube it. Watch a video on it, how to do it, where you should do it. Now put it back together. Dry fire it. Do a dry fire in 15 minutes a day. Why? Only 15 minutes. Aim at your light switch. Stick a post-it up. Stick 3 post-its up and transfer between 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot. Why? I'm not trying to turn you into John Wick. I want you to get comfortable with the firearm. Last night, we had a lot of new people come because we had our Christmas party at the event, at the range, which means we just bought food. What do they call it? Shoot and eat. We called it a shoot and eat. We brought the food in, everybody ate, and then we went out to the range and shot. And we had some people that were newer, and we actually DQ'd 2 people. We disqualified 2 people. One person dropped their firearm, and another person muzzled himself with the finger on the trigger. All right, you're done for the night. Put your firearm up. You can still hang around. You can help us hang stuff, but you're done because you violated safety protocol because you're not used to handling your firearm. And that could have been solved by, again, 15 minutes of dry fire and drawn from your holster at home the week before. Now you're going to have to wait until next month before you can shoot in the competition.
And those are, I've seen some DQs before, and I think that's, again, something that, everybody thinks they're infallible or whatever, but it's that being adjacent to it. I mean, usually it's somebody who's, like you're saying, like having some kind of health problem or just completely flustered or something, like something's going on. They either have like a, physical or a mental, distraction. And it happens because most people aren't just completely, it usually happens to somebody. I guess is what I'm saying. It's not like people are just casually, what's the word, like clumsy or something.
Unsafe.
Yeah, unsafe. Yeah. They don't stick around. Like no one invites them to these things. They're not welcome. So, I shouldn't say it like that because it just doesn't happen. There aren't people like that. Like that I've never in my whole entire life ever encountered anybody like that. But I have seen DQs or things like you're talking about, things that created a DQ, a disqualification or whatever. And it was, again, like a temporary thing that happened. But I guess what I'm getting at is, I'm not trying to justify them or nothing. I'm just saying that when those happen, I've been there when it happened, right? And the lady, like, whatever, she sweat something or she did something, I can't remember exactly, but I remember she got, had to take her crap and go back to her parking lot, essentially. And everybody, I think everybody, your reaction is to go, like, okay, calm down. This could happen to anybody. Like, let's take a step, like take a breath and we're not playing around here. So every once in a while when that happens and somebody has to go, I don't think it's sort of like it's a necessary thing, but it's like, that does have a positive, there's a silver lining to it. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that everybody it gets that pause. Now, I think you could simulate that and you could just have a thing where like a timer goes off, like a fire alarm almost, and like a fire drill where everybody would say, hey, we're not really in an emergency, but let's rehearse an emergency just so that, if one ever happens, it's not the first time we've ever experienced one. That's what fire drills are all about. You only do them in school, maybe a business or something have them, but that's why we had those, is so that the kids don't freak out when there's ever a fire, right? Well, the same thing, like there could be a random thing that pops up and says, hey, everybody, well, let's not wait for a DQ. Let's not wait for a dangerous thing to occur. Let's just remember that we're out here and let's keep our head in the game. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that sort
Mm-hmm.
of reminder, I guess, or it's like a, like a little deliberate, like, hey, nobody's doing nothing wrong, but you know why? Because we all got our head in the game, and let's just remember that we're keeping it that way. And I think that accomplishes the same thing, just to kind of make you go, yeah, let's not get so distracted here. Let's not get so comfortable. I guess that's what it is too. Sometimes you get so comfortable, you think
100,
you can't have a problem.
100%. I can't screw up because I know what I'm doing. So obviously, before every diversity shoot,
you know who often has that attitude? 9mm shooter.
not one show can go by without them catching heat. Nice.
I factored in there because I was also going to say, you got to get going, dude. Let's talk about, let's say thanks
Yep.
to CT, because the top tools are the ones I'm talking about. But there's also some new places that I want them to sponsor the show, and I should be able to give them a plug, but I can't remember because they don't sponsor the show. But there is a new place up in Illinois that I've been watching at SHOT Show, and they've been making some really nice fixtures and stuff that are more expensive, but way stronger. Anyway, that being said, tell us about did the last diversity shoot just happen?
Nope. 19th, baby.
Okay. Tell us
December
about that.
19th is the next diversity shoot. We have 2 tickets left to the next diversity shoot, Gun for Hire Range, Woodland Park. If you want to donate to me, if you want to help a brother out, what I do need going into this to make sure if you can get it to me, cool. If you can get it to me before the 19th, great. 223 ammunition, 5.56 ammo. If you want to ship some 9, great. 22, awesome. Those will help out. My guys with 45, they're used to not getting a lot of ammo. We only have a few. But anyway, if you want to help out, you can send the ammo. Contact me at tony@diversityshoot.com, and I'll give you an address to send it to. We are growing, diversityshoot.com. Keep around, check the schedule. I spent last Saturday contacting the ranges and agreeing that I can give them dates and they can approve them. So hopefully going into January, before I come out of December, I want the dates for everyone because I'm going to print them out. And that's going to be part of my handout to these companies at SHOT Show to show not only last year's schedule, that we were doing events every 2 weeks, but next year's schedule. And the fact that we've grown to yet another range. Now we're going to do 5 ranges in New Jersey throughout the year. And I've scheduled out to do at least 2 a month for the rest of 2025. And hopefully 501c will get charitable money coming in that I can take time to actually host an event in another state, just not in the Northeast. Maybe I can get back out to Nebraska and do some stuff in Omaha and get that coming through. So support us because we're growing the Second Amendment and firearms community by inviting all people in to let them know the Second Amendment is for everyone. And that's the whole point. We cannot win this fight because this is a generational civil rights struggle with just one party, just one race, just one gender. We need everyone to come together and fight for the human right of self-defense as codified by the Second Amendment. So that's what I'm doing. Please support me if you can. I've been doing it. 2025 will make it 10 years of doing it as a hobby. I'm going legit as a charitable organization because it takes more money to host these events that much. We burn through probably 1,500 rounds of ammo per event. And we also do about $300 in pizzas and drinks per event. And we also need to raise money to buy raffle items or get them donated by companies that want to support the work we do. And they don't have to be firearms related items because everyone that comes to my event is a firearms owner. So winning a cleaning kit means nothing if this is grandma's first time at the range. But winning a coffee combo pack or coffee sample pack or chocolate sample pack or something from a local business is a great thing. So if you want to help us out, please do. Again, Tony@diversityshoot.com. Our website is diversityshoot.com. And thank you very much for listening to me babble. And I appreciate all you guys that reach out and talk to me online. You can find me online on Instagram at SimonSaysTrain, at X at Second for Everyone, using the numbers second and four. Simon Says Train on Facebook. The second is for everyone on Facebook. And I think that's it, right? X, Facebook, and IG. Oh, and also listen to our podcast on the Firearms Radio Network every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We're on that. And for 2025, I'm coming back with a 2A4E podcast available on Spotify. And hopefully we can kick off with episode 100.
Right on. Looking forward to that. I'll say thanks then to Chris for dropping a super chat in there. Pretty cool. And I think that's the first time we've seen a super chat on this new system. So it automatically pops up on the screen and makes noises and stuff. So I'm going to play with that. I think I can adjust the sounds and stuff. So, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week, I think, right? It's not a holiday next week, is it?
Yeah.
Right
I
on.
don't think so. I don't know, man. It makes no difference. I'll be here.
Right on. So, yeah, we'll be back here next week. Thanks everybody for joining. And I'll click the button.
Shit. Ninja? Ninja! Ninja!
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the walls. The chair is against the walls. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.